A 10-year-old boy stood in front of the old storage shed, pointing at the door. "My mum is down there," he said. No one believed him, until a mysterious millionaire showed up, quietly reopened the old case files, and started digging beneath the ground the whole town had tried to bury. What they uncovered left the entire town in stunned silence. Fogbrook wasn't anything special until the rain started falling in a way unlike anywhere else. No downpours, no thunder, just cold drops, steady and soft, like the sky was trying to wash away a sin the earth refused to confess. 3 days of rain. Liam, 10 years old, living with his uncle, barely stepped outside except to take out the trash or fetch firewood. He didn't like the rain. Didn't hate it either, but whenever it rained for too long, the backyard began to smell. Not the usual musty, wet earth kind of smell. This was stronger, heavier, and it clung to your clothes, like something that had once lived and had been forgotten. Liam asked about it once. Carl, his uncle, just said, "Old concrete. Don't worry about it." Carl wasn't big on explanations. A man of silence, he had taken Liam in after the boy's dad died and his mom disappeared. Guardianship papers wrapped up in a matter of weeks. No tears, no goodbyes. People said, "At least the kid still has family." Carl said, "Quiet kid. Easy to raise." The shed sat at the edge of the yard, falling apart. Rusted lock. Carl said it was dangerous. Rusty nails, rotten boards, snakes. But Liam knew one thing. Carl hadn't set foot in there for 3 years. Except once. Last winter. It was close to midnight when Liam woke to the sound of the back door opening. From the attic, he saw Carl in a coat, flashlight in hand, stepping into the rain. He stood in front of the shed for a long time. Didn't open it. Didn't smoke. Just stood there, as if listening for something beneath the ground. The next morning, Liam asked. Carl just shook his head. Grown-up stuff. Now it was the 4th day of rain. Water roared from the gutters, mud covered the narrow path. Liam went out, just like he was told. "Pour the water. Come right back." He stopped near the shed. Something felt wrong. Right beside the foundation, the ground had sunk, a human-shaped dip. No grass grew. Water didn't pool, as if the soil had been dug up, then hurriedly filled back in. Liam knelt and scraped at the mud. The dirt gave way, soft, loose. Something hard scraped his fingers, a shard of stone, with a single letter carved on it, A. It wasn't the name that made him freeze. It was the feeling, like someone had just called to him from under the earth. The wind shifted. The shed door creaked open. "What are you doing?" "Carl." Liam hid his hand behind his back. "I was pouring the water." Carl walked over, looked at the disturbed earth, then at Liam. "Give it." Liam handed him the shard. Carl stared at it for a second. No surprise, no questions. Then he hurled it into the drainage ditch. The sound it made was dry and sharp, like a cough breaking through a winter night. "You hang around here again, you'll regret it. We've got copperheads the size of your arm." He turned and walked away. Shut the door. Never looked back. Night fell fast. Liam stood in the yard. The yellow light from the house stretched his shadow across the muddy ground. But the shadow wasn't his. It was bigger, wider, still, as if someone was already lying beneath him. Liam swallowed hard, didn't cry, didn't step closer, just turned around and walked back inside. That night, he dreamed. Grass growing upward from the soil, wrapping around his ankles. A woman standing there, no face, but eyes, very clear, the eyes of a mother, who didn't need to ask. She already knew her child was afraid. Ever since doubt crept into Liam's life, everything felt different. His thoughts lingered. warm, crawling up his spine, like a voice without sound. A kind of instinct no one could explain. Mum's still here, down there. She's cold. She needs me. No one had ever taught Liam to believe in things like that. But this morning, as he looked out at the backyard, where the sunken patch of earth had been covered with gravel, he knew something was being hidden, and someone needed him to see it. Carl sat at the table, eyes on the newspaper, stirring a cup of cold coffee. "What were you saying out in the yard last night?" Liam froze. "Nothing." "Nothing? You were muttering Mom and Shed? Try saying that in front of someone at school and see what happens. They'll think something's wrong with you. I'm not raising a kid labeled unstable." His voice wasn't loud, but every word was heavy. And for the first time, Liam didn't retreat. He said quietly, "It was just a dream." Carl said nothing more, but his glance, short and cold, made it clear. He heard, he understood, and he didn't want to talk about it again. At school, the sky was still grey. The yard smelled like rain, hadn't quite finished falling. First period was art. Ms. Monette handed out paper and pencils, her voice gentle. "Today, draw the person you miss most." Liam didn't think long. He didn't draw his mother from memory. He drew a shadowy figure standing at a rusted door, back turned. In front of the figure was cracked ground, and a faint hand reaching up through it. Ms. Monette paused longer than usual behind Liam's desk. "Liam, who is this in your drawing?" "I'm not sure," he said, "but I think I've seen them." "In a dream?" He nodded. In her private notes, she wrote, "Student displays haunting imagery and repressed emotion. Should be monitored more closely." She didn't judge, but she knew. Children who can draw fear usually live with it. After class, Liam's drawing was sent to the principal's office. Principal Louise studied it for a long time, tapping her pen. She wasn't one to spook easily. But the boy's images unsettled her. At noon, Liam was called to the nurse's office. Nurse Beatrice greeted him with a soft smile and a well-worn lab coat. "I'm just going to ask a few questions, not check for illness," she said. "You nervous?" Liam shook his head. He wasn't scared. He just didn't know how to explain things only he could see, things not above ground. After a few questions about his sleep and appetite, Beatrice paused. "Do you have any dreams that repeat?" Liam looked up. "Yes, but I'm not sure they're dreams." "What do you see?" "Someone calling my name. In the rain. From underground." Beatrice didn't react right away. She nodded slowly, then made a small mark in her notebook. "I think you're remembering something, not imagining it. And I don't think anything's wrong with you." Later, Beatrice went to see Principal Louise. "That boy isn't making things up," she said. "I think he remembers, or at least, his body does." Louise frowned slightly. "I understand. But if the guardian won't cooperate, we still have a duty to recommend therapy." Beatrice didn't argue, but her eyes held a quiet fear. Sometimes, people don't ignore a child because they don't believe them, but because they don't want to. During recess, Liam sat alone on the classroom steps. Ellie, a girl from the grade above, who always seemed to appear when someone needed her, sat beside him without asking. "Your drawing looked like someone buried, but not dead." Liam didn't look at her, but he heard every word. "Do you think someone can be hidden? Not gone?" he asked. He nodded slightly to his own question. Ellie didn't smile. She just pulled a piece of lemon gum from her pocket and placed it next to him. "For you? Lemon flavor?" Then she walked away, as simple as if she'd said all that needed to be said. After school, the rain had stopped. Liam walked home slowly. By the fence, Clara Beckett, the silver-haired, thin neighbor, was trimming her lavender pots. She saw him and asked softly, "Late from school?" "I was drawing." "What did you draw?" "My mum." Clara paused. Not out of surprise, but because it had been so long since anyone had spoken that woman's name. "Do you remember my mum?" Liam asked. Clara nodded after a moment. "I do. She used to sit by the shed, sewing. Always had a little wooden box in her lap. I used to think she was waiting for someone," Clara added. "But now I wonder. Maybe she was worried someone else was waiting for her." That night, Liam went upstairs. In his desk drawer was the old wooden box his mother had left behind. He opened it, unfolded a note tucked inside. "If one day you find this, please believe I didn't leave you because I wanted to." The third time he read it, it no longer felt like comfort. It felt like proof. He tucked the note into his pocket, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped into the backyard. The shed was still there, locked, silent, cold as every other night, but no longer frightening. He knelt down and scraped away the gravel. Under the rocks, fresh soil, a faint trace of white chalk. At the edge of a crack, something like the imprint of small fingernails. Liam didn't know exactly what it was, but he knew this. He had to dig deeper, not just into the ground, but into the things adults were too afraid to name. The ground beneath Liam's feet was still soft, even though the rain had stopped. He stood silently in front of the shed, white lime stains still clinging to his hands from when he scraped the surface a few days earlier. Carl had covered the spot with gravel again, then poured patchy cement over it, like it was just an old foundation that needed fixing after the storm. But Liam knew better. The gravel was too neat, and the smell was still there. A sharp, sour stench that stuck to the back of his throat. Not the scent of rain, but of earth that had been buried with something once alive. That morning, Carl had said, "If I catch you sneaking round back again, you'll regret it." He didn't have to yell. His voice was firm enough to seal any cracks in Liam's thoughts before they could form. But Liam couldn't help thinking, couldn't help standing there and feeling that something beneath the surface wasn't done, wasn't at peace. Next door, Clara Beckett stood at her kitchen window, drying a teacup she hadn't set down, her eyes fixed through the glass, landing exactly where Liam stood. That patch of sunken earth hadn't changed much over the years. She knew it well, because that was where, years ago, she'd often seen Anna Oliver sitting quietly, embroidering by the shed, always facing the locked door, like she was waiting for someone to come out. Clara remembered that unease in Anna's eyes, and how she turned away, didn't ask, didn't interfere, told herself it was other people's business. She thought back to her own son, Michael, 17, gone after a fight. Police said he ran away. She believed it. She didn't search, didn't push, didn't corner anyone. By the time she realized the truth, he'd already become a thing of the past. A silence everyone tiptoed around, a quiet guilt. Liam reminded her of Michael. The same eyes, calm, but always looking like they were about to be left behind. And that look, in a child, was what told Clara. She couldn't stay silent again. She opened the drawer under her dining table and pulled out a small tin box she hadn't touched in a decade. Inside was a yellowed newspaper clipping, its creases stiff like bone. She read the headline that had haunted her for years. Female, 28, missing, A.O., Fogbrook. No foul play suspected. Case closed. No one asked questions after that, because Carl had said, "She called. She's fine." And everyone stayed quiet. Just like Clara had, and Michael had never come home. That afternoon, Liam walked alone to the library. He brought nothing with him but a folded sketch. The library was small, musty, with broken computers and nothing but stacks of worn newspapers. He flipped through pages, searching for his mother's name. Nothing. Until someone stepped closer. A tall man, brown blonde hair, long coat, holding a book on property law. He had been watching Liam for a while before he finally spoke. "Looking for someone?" His voice was deep, steady, not unkind. Liam nodded, eyes still down. "I want to know where my mum went. Everyone says she left me, but I don't believe that." The man set the book down. His hands were large, solid, his voice steady. "Ellison Reed," he said, extending a hand. "Used to be a lawyer. Now I help people everyone else stopped looking for." Liam pulled out his sketch, a woman in a long dress standing at the shed, a hand reaching up from the earth. "I keep dreaming about her like this. Over and over." Ellison studied the drawing carefully. His eyes lingered on the hand emerging from the ground. His face changed, a shift subtle but deep, like an old echo in his memory had just been stirred. "I think my mum is under our house," Liam whispered. He didn't say it loud, but it sliced through the quiet air like a blade. Ellison didn't ask why. He only asked, "You sure? Number, but I believe it." Ellison nodded, not fast, not with promises, but with something certain in his gaze. A decision made. After Liam left, Ellison reopened the land book he'd been holding. Near the back, a small note read, "Transfer from AO to CO. Title unresolved due to missing witness signature." He paused. AO, not a stranger. That had been his daughter's initials, the ones she always used in her journals, before she died. A coincidence? Maybe, but not one he could ignore. That night, Clara came to Liam's house. She didn't bring cookies, didn't make small talk. She sat down and handed him the old newspaper clipping. "This is what no one ever told you," she said. "You knew her?" Liam asked, barely audible. "I used to see your mother out there in the backyard, stitching cloth for hours in front of that shed. No one sits that long. If they're planning to leave their child." Liam tightened his grip on the drawing. Clara leaned in, touched his hand with a tenderness too late to be motherly, but not too late to matter. "When you're ready," she said, "I'll be there. I won't let it happen again." That night, after all the lights in town had gone out, Clara put on her coat, grabbed a flashlight, and stepped around the narrow path behind the fence. She didn't bring anything, except for a single smooth white stone in her pocket. She walked to the sunken patch of earth by the shed and placed the stone gently in the center, like someone planting a silent vow. Tomorrow morning, if the stone was gone, she'd know she hadn't imagined any of it. The morning after the fifth stretch of rain, Liam stood at the attic window, eyes on the backyard, just like always. But today, something was different. The white stone Clara had placed at the foot of the shed door the day before, it wasn't where she left it. It had been moved, not far, just half a step, but perfectly aligned, squared off, as if placed there by someone who had done it before. Not the wind, not an animal. Liam didn't say a word. He didn't back away either. He just stood there. For a long time, as if waiting for the soil to speak. The breeze carried a sharper scent than usual. Not mud, not grass. Something familiar that his body recognized but couldn't explain. A smell that brought back last night's dream. The woman in the blue dress, reaching from the soft earth, calling his name, not with her voice, but with her eyes. Liam turned inside, opened the wooden box, pulled out the drawing. This time, besides the shed, the yard, and 3 red dots, he had added a figure by the fence, a slightly hunched back, a broom in hand. Clara. He hadn't planned to draw her, but his hand moved on its own, guided, maybe, by memory. That morning, Clara was sweeping leaves when Liam approached. "Mrs. Clara," he said, pulling the drawing from his coat. She took it, scanned it briefly. Her eyes didn't stop on the shed, but on the figure by the fence. She pressed her lips together. Didn't ask a thing. "I showed this to someone," Liam said. "Who?" "A man named Ellison. I met him at the library. He's a lawyer. I think he understands." Clara nodded, not surprised. She turned to look at the shed, then at the spot where the white stone had once been. She picked up a twig, walked over, and pressed it gently into one of the 3 sunken spots, replacing the stone with a new sign. "I think it's time," she said softly. "Time we did something." In a small rented room, Ellison spread the drawing out on his desk. Under the dim lamp, the pencil lines drawn by a child seemed to pulse with life. On the corner, it read Fogbrook Street. 3 depressions. A woman's figure by the fence. More vivid than any testimony Ellison had ever handled in his legal career. He picked up his phone, called Gavin Harper, an old friend in land records. "You still have property maps for Fogbrook South. I need to know who owns Lot 17." Gavin called back 10 minutes later. "Carl Oliver. Previous owner, Anna Oliver. No valid transfer of title." Ellison didn't flinch. "Has anyone ever requested that file?" A pause. "One woman. Clara Beckett. But since she wasn't a legal relative, it was denied." That name stopped Ellison cold. He had seen it scribbled in the margin of the drawing, in pen, small and neat. "Mrs. Clara usually stands by the fence." Carl sat in his office, flipping through tax files, when he found a strange slip of paper. No legal confirmation. Land use rights invalid. He didn't need to wonder who wrote it. Didn't have to think hard. Cold sweat beaded down his neck. He clenched the paper, gripping it like someone had just handed him a blade. He stood up, walked toward the shed, key in hand. The wind brushed his cheek. No one was around. But his shadow stretched long across the dirt, just like that winter night, at the same hour, with one clenched hand. A flash of memory. Anna laughing in the kitchen when the pipe burst, her hands soaked, hair a mess, voice echoing through the house. "Yell louder! The water pressure loves it!" Carl swallowed hard. For a moment, he almost heard her laugh, cutting through the hiss of the gas burner. He hadn't been born a killer, just a man who made a mistake, and never found the courage to undo it in time. That afternoon, Clara received a call from an unknown number. "This is Ellison Reed. I think we need to talk about Anna and about Liam." They met at a small cafe. No introductions, no pretending they didn't know. Clara sat down like she'd been waiting for this day a long time. "You believe the boy?" she asked. Ellison laid a copy of the land file on the table, and a letter. "He doesn't need me to believe him. I had a daughter once, and I didn't believe her soon enough." Clara said nothing at first. Then she handed him an old handwritten note. "If anything happens to me, Liam should not stay with Carl." Ellison read it and stopped. Not because of the words, but the handwriting. It matched the last letter his daughter had sent him before she died. "I didn't run away. I just had no one left who believed me." He folded the note, carefully, said nothing more, but his grip tightened on the file. "What do we do now?" Clara asked. "Stay quiet, watch, and when the time comes, act precisely." Clara didn't respond, but before leaving, she discreetly snapped a photo of the file with her old phone and tucked it into the inner pocket of her coat. Careful, silent, like a woman who had stayed silent too long and wasn't willing to be silent again. That night, from the attic window, Liam saw Carl standing at the shed door, key in hand, shoulders slumped, his shadow long and heavy. Liam didn't know if he would open it, but he knew something had slipped from Carl's grip, like the first crack beneath old cement. Near the fence, Clara stood in the dark, saying nothing. But in her eyes, there was a fire Liam had never seen before. And for the first time, Liam didn't feel like just a child carrying a strange dream alone. His mother was waiting, and he wasn't the only one who knew it now. Dear friend, if you've followed Liam, Clara, and Ellison this far, maybe it's time to ask yourself, if you were Clara, would you stay silent or step into the light? If you were Liam, would you have the courage to speak a truth no one wants to hear? Share your thoughts below. What resonated most with you? Was it Clara's gaze at the shed, Carl's first tremble, or the drawing of a boy once labeled just imaginative? Leave a comment, because maybe, just maybe, your voice is the strength someone else needs to start digging up the past in their own life. That morning, a thick mist blanketed the town of Fogbrook like a thin burial shroud. Clara Beckett wore her old straw hat, carrying a gardening spade, a pair of gloves, and a small cloth bag. No one asked where she was going. Perhaps people had grown used to it, to the idea that the old widow was up to something strange with the orphan boy from Carl Oliver's house. Liam stood by the fence, holding his drawing close, the red dots clearly marked. He said nothing, but his eyes were steady. "I know you are ready," Clara said softly. They began digging at the first depression near the base of the shed. The earth was softer than usual, as if it had already been disturbed. Every shovel of dirt was heavy, not from weight, but from memory awakening beneath the soil. Before long, a pale blue piece of fabric surfaced, lace-trimmed, frayed, soaked in mud. Liam knelt, hands trembling as he lifted it. "My mum used to wear dresses like this," he whispered. Clara didn't reply. She carefully wrapped the fabric in a clean white cloth. Just then, a sharp voice cut through the quiet from across the fence. "Clara, are you teaching that boy to dig up graves now?" It was Agnes Holcomb, her tone harsh. "How long do you plan to carry on this madness?" Clara stood, silent. A widow and a motherless boy, digging up dirt in search of justice. People are going to think Fogbrook's filled with lunatics. "Let them think what they will," Clara answered calmly. "I'm just trying to help a child find something he never should have lost." Liam didn't flinch. He looked at Agnes as if looking through a moss-covered wall. "I'm not crazy, but I won't pretend I forgot my mum just because everyone else did." Agnes scoffed. "Maybe that mother of yours left because she knew you weren't worth staying for." Clara's fists clenched, but Liam placed a hand gently on her arm. "You don't have to say anything," he murmured. "The ground will speak for you." Inside the house, Carl stood frozen at the window. He had been watching from the beginning. When he saw the fabric lifted from the earth, he turned away, opened the safe, and pulled out a plastic-wrapped file. Inside, a fake land transfer document, Anna's signature, but no date. Carl lit a match, burning the corner to give it the look of age and damage. "No one finds anything if they don't know where truth begins," he muttered. Then he made a call. "Martha Keene, I need you to show up. Remind people Liam's got a history of emotional issues." "You're insane," Martha snapped. "They're already digging. What if something real comes up?" "Then we convince them it was never real to begin with." That afternoon, Ellison Reed returned to Fogbrook, unannounced. He arrived just as Clara and Liam were wrapping the cloth. "I'll take this for testing," he said, "and I'm contacting Detective Carmen Walker." Clara nodded, no smile. "It's time." That night, Carl stepped into the yard. In his hands, a bottle of acid and a black trash bag. Silently, he poured the acid into the hole, over the patch of new grass. The smell was sharp, stinging the eyes. "Not every body needs to be found," he muttered. The next morning, Clara discovered the hole filled in, a strange smell lingering in the air. The fabric was gone. "Someone tampered with the site," she said. Liam didn't speak. He sat down, opened his drawing again, and added new details. Grooves in the soil, color changes, footprints. By late afternoon, Clara and Ellison met with Detective Carmen Walker. Carmen reviewed the case file, her expression tight with skepticism. "No body, no confession. I can't get a warrant to dig." Ellison laid a photo of the cloth on her desk, along with a statement from Mr. Harris, an elderly neighbor who once saw lights in the shed the night Anna disappeared. "I'm asking for 3 days. If you won't act, we'll go public with this file." Carmen looked up. She didn't answer right away, but after a long pause, she nodded. 3 days. That night, Liam added a note to his drawing. "If I'm wrong, I'm just a boy who dreams too much. But if I'm right, then someone's lived too long on a lie." Carl's lights went out early, but from the attic, Liam's gaze stayed wide awake, still watching. Rain fell again over Fogbrook, not in torrents, not with thunder, just that same quiet rain, long, clinging, like a memory that refuses to fade. Clara and Liam stood in the kitchen, watching droplets streak down the glass. They didn't go outside that day. They didn't need to. What mattered now wasn't buried in the ground anymore. It was buried in people's hearts. After the meeting with Detective Carmen, Ellison spent the morning digging through town records, property maps, land transfers, names of neighbors who once lived near Anna's house. In a faded note, he found Harris, retired, former firefighter. It noted that Harris had the only window with a direct view of the shed. Ellison met with Clara. "I need to talk to him," he said. "Maybe it's not much, but he saw something, or chose to look away." "Mr. Harris owes Carl a life," Clara said softly. "And some debts imprison you for life." "We also need to think about protecting Liam," Ellison added, voice low. "Carl's unraveling. I'm afraid he might do something reckless." Clara nodded. "That boy shouldn't be in that house anymore." Ellison was quiet for a moment, then said gently, "If it comes to it, I'll take him in. The place I'm renting has security, and I don't have anyone else there. For now, maybe that's the safest place for him." Clara looked at him, eyes full of gratitude. "I trust you," she said. The small house by the fence was silent, its windows fogged with condensation. When Ellison knocked, Harris didn't answer right away. His hand rested on his cane. His eyes never left the garden. "That was a long time ago," he finally said. "So long that saying it now won't bring anyone back." "But it might help a child move forward," Ellison replied, "with the truth." Harris said nothing, just nodded slightly, then stepped back inside. Leaving the door ajar, a gesture caught somewhere between refusal and invitation. That evening, Liam brought a small cake. He placed it gently on the doorstep. "I made this," he said, barely above a whisper. "It's not very good, but I don't know how else to say thank you." He turned and walked away. Through the curtain slit, Harris watched him go, his dry eyes slowly filling with tears. That night, he called Clara. "Tell Ellison to come, tomorrow morning, alone." Carl noticed the cake Liam had left. He saw Harris open the door to take it. He slammed his teacup on the counter, ceramic, shattered. A shard pierced his hand. But he didn't feel pain, only the rush of blood that matched the rage boiling in his head. "Fools!" he snarled. "Digging up lies, accusing me, putting on a show. I raised that boy, gave him a roof. Now he's digging up his mother's grave to destroy me." He stormed into the yard, kicking down part of the wooden fence. Clara stood there. Carl pointed a trembling finger. "You take him to court. I'll spill everything." "You knew, didn't you? You were there too. Don't pretend your hands are clean." Clara didn't back away. "You're not afraid of punishment," she said calmly. "You're afraid of being seen for who you really are." Carl turned, teeth clenched. "You think the law's coming to save you?" "I've lived inside the law since before you could spell it." The next morning, Ellison visited Harris. No files, no legal talk, just two men, the last witnesses to a dying truth. Harris spoke, his voice steady, no tremble. "It was raining that night. I was washing dishes. My wife was in bed. Carl went into the yard. There was someone following him. Anna." He gripped the edge of his chair. They argued. I couldn't hear the words, but I saw him yank her arm. She slipped, hit her head on a bucket, fell. Didn't get back up. Silence. Then, I stood there. Didn't call anyone. 3 months earlier, Carl saved my wife from a stroke. I owed him her life. So I stayed silent. I let a woman die, because I couldn't pay the price of a debt. Ellison nodded. Then pay it the right way. That afternoon, Ellison brought Harris to the police station. Detective Carmen met them in a private room. Harris gave his full account, every detail. He even sketched the yard, the light angles, the view from his kitchen window. Carmen sat in silence for a long moment, then stood. "I'll request an exhumation order. Tonight, the shed will be sealed off." Before leaving, she looked at Ellison. "You just gave that boy something the justice system rarely delivers. Belief." Liam heard the news. His eyes welled with tears. But this time, not from fear. For the first time, an adult had stood beside him. Not out of pity, but for the truth. The rain hadn't stopped. But for Liam, it was the first day the rain didn't smell like grief. Early morning. The rain had stopped. Fogbrook's air hung thick and damp, like a wet towel left overnight in a dark room. On South Road, the golden beams of an SUV driven by Ellison cut through the trees as it turned onto the narrow drive leading to the wooden house where Carl and Liam lived. Ellison parked by the fence and stepped out, his long coat catching the morning mist. He wasn't in a rush, but every step he took said clearly, "Today, no one will stop what's about to happen." Carl was already waiting on the porch. His expression didn't show surprise, only coldness, the wary look of a wounded animal recognizing the trap closing in. "What are you doing here?" Carl asked, voice sharp with hostility. "I've come to take Liam," Ellison replied. "I've spoken with Detective Carmen. As of today, the boy will be removed from your custody until the investigation is complete." Carl stepped off the porch, blocking the door. "I'm his legal guardian. Without a court order, you're not taking him anywhere." Ellison pulled out a document, a copy of a temporary protective order signed by Detective Carmen under Title 42, Section 63-7-620 of the South Carolina Code, granting emergency custody in cases of potential physical or emotional harm. "The detective found evidence of threat," Ellison said. "This order is legal. If you interfere, you'll be charged with obstruction of justice." Carl laughed bitterly. This whole town's lost its mind. An old man with dyed hair, a half-senile widow, and a mentally unstable kid, digging up corpses like it's a show. At that moment, a siren wailed, sharp and unmistakable. 2 patrol cars rolled slowly up the street, red and blue lights, washing over the house's wooden front. Neighbors opened their doors. Heads peeked out from windows. A few stepped onto porches. Agnes Holcomb folded her arms by her fence, scowling. Mr. Harris stepped slowly onto his porch, leaning on his cane. Every eye turned to Carl. Then the back door opened. Liam stepped outside with a small backpack on his shoulders. He didn't look at Carl, but his grip on the bag strap was tight, holding on to years of twisted memories. "You ready?" Ellison asked gently. Liam nodded. "I'm not leaving like someone running. I'm leaving like someone finally coming home." Carl lunged and grabbed the boy's arm. "You'll regret this," he snarled. "You won't survive what's coming." The rear car door opened. Detective Carmen stepped out, flanked by 2 officers. Her heels clicked sharply against the path as she walked toward Carl. "Mr. Carl Oliver," she said, voice steady as stone. "Step aside. This child is now under state protection." Carl froze. His eyes blazed. His jaw trembled, mouth twitching with words that wouldn't come. Every eye around him, neighbors, police, Clara standing at a distance, fixed on him. Carl let go, slowly, as if releasing a part of himself. His eyes reddened, but he didn't fight. Liam walked quickly to the SUV. Ellison steadied him with a hand. Before getting in, Liam turned, not to look at Carl, but at the backyard. That place, today, would finally be dug up. The SUV pulled away from Carl's house, heading straight to the child welfare shelter, where Liam would stay under protective custody until a court ruling. Ellison handed over the legal documents, signed the temporary placement form, and watched the boy disappear into the softly lit room. Then he turned the car around and drove straight back to the site. That afternoon, the shed area was cordoned off with yellow crime scene tape. The scent of damp earth mixed with gasoline from the excavator waiting nearby. The people of Fogbrook lined up behind the fence, curious, anxious, haunted by what the town had long buried. Clara stood beside Detective Carmen. She said nothing, only watched the cement floor. "They covered it well," said an officer. "Thick slab, but you can't hide a smell forever." The excavator started tearing through the concrete, each section lifting like old snakeskin. Beneath the concrete, the soil was dark and uneven. "There's something here," a technician shouted. The machine stopped. Investigators stepped in. A small, sunken patch revealed itself, and within it, fragments of bone woven into rotted cloth. Clara closed her eyes. A hand gripped hers, Carmen's. "We'll run DNA," the detective said quietly. "But I believe we just found Anna Oliver." 3 days earlier, as the final layer of damp soil was being cleared, Liam had been allowed back to the scene. Carmen had approved his presence under supervision. He stood just behind the police line, silent, still, his eyes locked on the hollow in the earth. Without waiting for permission, Liam stepped forward. The evening wind tossed his hair. He raised his hand and pointed down. "She's here," he said, not loud, but certain. "My mom. She never left. They just buried her." The words sliced through the air. Everyone, even the officers, fell still. Ellison placed a hand on Liam's shoulder, said nothing, but his eyes betrayed the emotion. Clara, standing farther back, clenched her old handkerchief. She knew that sentence, from Liam himself, was more powerful than any written statement. To the left, Mr. Harris nodded. "I saw Carl out there that night. I've stayed silent too long." Across the fence, Agnes Holcomb stood pale and shaken. Her voice, usually sharp, faltered. "Oh my God, it's real. All this is real." A child nearby, Ellie, Liam's former classmate, clutched her mother's hand. She whispered, "Was his mum really there all this time?" Her mother didn't answer, just pulled her daughter into her arms. 3 days later, Carmen received the lab results. She opened the envelope in front of Ellison and Clara. "It's her," she said, barely more than a breath. "Dental and DNA both confirm. The remains belong to Anna Oliver." Clara sat still, hands folded. She didn't cry. She just bowed her head as if saying goodbye again. this time with honor. Ellison clenched his fist. Now we charge him. That afternoon, police returned to the wooden house. Carl sat alone in the kitchen. The morning paper lay open, its bold headline screaming, "Identified. Anna Oliver was murdered." He didn't pick it up. His hand trembled, reaching for a glass, but stopped midway. The reflection in the window stared back at him, hair disheveled, eyes sunken, shoulders hunched. A stranger. 3 hard knocks on the front door. "Fogbrook Police," a woman's voice called firmly. "Carl Oliver, open the door by order of arrest." Carl rose. Every step felt like sinking into wet cement. He opened the door. Detective Carmen stood there with 2 officers, one holding cuffs, the other reading the warrant. "Carl Oliver, you are under arrest for first-degree murder, evidence tampering, and child endangerment. Anything you say may be used against you in court." Carl didn't resist, but he didn't bow his head either. "You don't know what it took to keep that secret," he muttered. "I didn't hate her. I just wasn't strong enough to let the truth live." "You don't get to choose anymore," Carmen said. "Justice will do what you couldn't." As he was led out, neighbors stood along the walkway. No applause, no shouts, only silence, heavy as judgment. From a window, Liam watched him go. He didn't smile, didn't cry. He just clenched his fist, tight, as if holding on to the only thing that remained. The truth. Morning in Fogbrook was just like any other. Still, damp, and clinging to the scent of wet earth. But inside the small room at the community support center, where Liam now stayed, everything had changed. The boy sat on a single bed, arms wrapped around a thin blanket, eyes gazing out the window. Outside, the treetops stirred gently in the breeze. No one said anything, but everyone knew. Today, Liam would reclaim his real name. Clara arrived early. She brought a cardboard box. Inside were the few belongings of Anna's she had managed to save. A small notebook, an unfinished embroidered cloth, a faded black and white photo of Anna cradling Liam as a baby. Ellison was already there, joined by a legal representative from the county. A tall woman with dark hair and a calm voice began, "We can begin if the boy is ready." Liam nodded. He didn't smile, but his eyes were steady. Not the brightness of joy, but the clarity of knowing who he was. The woman continued. "By formal petition from Mr. Ellison Reed and approval from the state's Child Welfare Agency, Liam is eligible today to legally take his mother's last name, if he agrees." Liam looked at the photo. "I want to take my mum's name, Oliver, Anna Oliver. My name will be Liam Oliver." The representative smiled gently. "Liam, do you understand what this means?" He nodded again. "It's the first thing that's truly mine, not something someone else gave me." By noon, they left the center. Rain fell softly. Clara held an umbrella over Liam as they walked down Fogbrook's main street, once his path to school, now a different road altogether. People greeted Liam, and for the first time, no one called him that boy from Carl's place. Some simply nodded quietly. That silence, Clara knew, was the town's unspoken apology. Outside the corner store, Martha Keene, who once spread cruel rumors about Anna, stood beneath the awning. As Liam passed, she didn't look him in the eye, but she said, "Liam, I didn't know everything back then. I'm sorry." Liam stopped. He didn't answer, but gave a small nod. To Clara, that nod was enough. It meant forgiveness. Behind the gas station, Mr. Dwight, the old builder who once saw Carl pour cement behind the shed, stood with his cap in hand, eyes downcast. He had once stayed silent, out of fear. Today he lifted his gaze and nodded to Liam. "You're a brave kid. Thank you for doing what the grown-ups couldn't." Nearby, Gavin Harper, The county records clerk who had helped Ellison uncover the falsified deeds, stepped out from the library entrance. He handed Liam a small notebook. "Blank pages," he said. "You get to write what you want in here now. No one else gets to do it for you." Carl remained in custody at the county detention center, awaiting trial. He didn't say much, but one officer shared that, on the night Liam's name change was finalized, Carl sat in his cell for hours, staring at the ceiling. When asked if he needed anything, he simply said, "I had a family once, and I was the one who erased it." That afternoon, Liam and Ellison visited the southern edge of Fogbrook to a small patch of land temporarily fenced off, awaiting restoration. Ellison placed a bundle of dried lavender on the soil. Clara pulled a wooden plaque from her coat, carved with the words, "Anna Oliver, a mother who never left her child." Gavin, Dwight, and Martha stood a few feet back. No one spoke, but their eyes were fixed on the ground, each gaze offering back something they had once left behind. Liam knelt, placing his hand on the soil. He didn't shake. He didn't cry. He simply said, "I'm going to care for this place. Plant flowers again. I'll call it Anna's Memory Garden." Ellison nodded. "If you want, I'll help. The whole town should know. Something was buried here once, and we're not burying the truth again." Liam didn't answer, but when he stood, his shoulders no longer curled inward. They stood firm, as if someone's hand now rested on them, passing down strength only real love can leave behind. As evening fell, the town's streetlights flickered on, one by one. Liam, Clara, and Ellison stayed beside the plot, the ground that would become Anna's memory garden. Liam didn't want to leave right away. He needed to feel it. Then came light footsteps. Ms. Monette, Liam's art teacher, approached, holding a box of drawings. "I'm sorry I didn't believe you sooner," she said, handing Liam the first picture he ever drew in class. "Some truths come from places we least expect. You were brave enough not to ignore it." Behind her, Beatrice, the school nurse, quietly stepped forward. She held a sealed medical file. "I kept it," she told Ellison. "Something told me to. Sometimes what we need isn't a diagnosis, but someone who listens." Ellison gave a soft nod. He understood. The adults of Fogbrook, once too distracted to hear a child, were finally learning to listen, one small moment at a time. A final visitor arrived, Mr. Harris, who had kept silent for a decade. He didn't come close, just leaned on his cane beneath a tree, watching the ground. "I should have spoken sooner," he murmured as Clara stepped beside him. "But late is better than never, right?" Clara didn't scold him. She simply placed her hand on his bony arm. "I believe Anna has forgiven you. And Liam, he will too." Liam turned and caught Mr. Harris's eyes. He nodded, wordless, but enough to build a bridge. Beside the wooden plaque bearing his mother's name, Liam pulled a small lavender plant from his backpack. He dug a small hole and planted it gently. "This is the first one," he said. "Anyone who comes here, if they want, can plant one more for my mum. No need for words. Just remembrance." Gavin was the first to step forward. He handed Liam a pouch of seeds. "White daisies. My mother loved them." Beatrice followed with a rosemary sprig. "Good for memory," she said, smiling faintly. Monette offered a stone with a heart carved into it, made by Liam's old classmates. Fogbrook began to change, not through noise, but through quiet, deliberate acts. What had once been buried now rose, not to accuse, but to be seen, to be healed, and to be forgiven. On the wooden nameplate, the streetlight reflected in a strange, soft glow, as if someone had just laid a hand upon it, reminding all who passed. A name never truly disappears as long as someone dares to speak it, in truth. The next morning, A thin layer of mist settled over every rooftop in Fogbrook. The air was cool, damp, still thick with the scent of wet grass. Drops of water clung to the wooden sign above Anna's resting place, where Anna's memory garden was just beginning to bloom. Liam woke early in his small room at the shelter. He had grown used to waking before the knock at the door, as if instinctively guarding what little control he had left in places where everything else felt temporary. He folded his blanket neatly, buttoned a clean shirt, and stepped out onto the second-floor balcony. From there, he could see the silent rooftops of the town. A few kitchens had lights on. Somewhere, the day had already begun. Downstairs, Ellison waited. He didn't need to speak. Liam gave a quiet nod. Together, they headed for the car. They were meeting with Detective Carmen. Today was the next necessary step, formally charging Carl Oliver with newly supported evidence and testimony. On the way to the station, they stopped at the bakery Clara liked. She was already there, waiting, with a worn file folder in front of her. She wasn't wearing her usual thick coat. Instead, a soft blue scarf was wrapped around her neck, the color of the dress Anna once wore. "You ready, sweetheart?" Clara asked. Liam nodded. "I don't want anyone else telling my story anymore." At Carmen's office, the atmosphere was quiet, eerily so. The room had pale wood flooring, the air smelling faintly of old paper and instant coffee. Detective Carmen entered carrying a thick file, her face composed but alert. "We'll be recording this interview," she said, "because Liam's testimony will be key." Liam sat upright. A small recorder sat in front of him. Ellison on his left, Clara on his right. Carmen began. "Can you tell us when you first suspected something was wrong?" Liam's voice didn't shake. "It was after the rain. The backyard smelled strange, not like normal dirt, and I found a stone with the letter A on it." Carmen nodded, taking notes. She let him guide the story. Liam spoke of dreams, of the hand reaching through the soil, of the woman's shadow, someone he'd never met in life, but who felt more familiar than anyone else. "You once said, 'My mom is under my house,'" Carmen recalled. "Why?" "Because it's true," Liam said simply. "I didn't imagine it. I remembered it." The testimony lasted over an hour. Afterward, Carmen slid a new case report across the table, along with an official pre-trial motion. Carl Oliver would be prosecuted for first-degree murder, custodial fraud, and obstruction of justice. "We have one more witness," she said. "Someone I think you're ready to face." Liam didn't ask who. He already knew. "Mr. Harris." That afternoon, Liam, Ellison, and Carmen visited Harris's house. The old wood-paneled home still bore water stains, but the front garden had flowers, tended despite the years. Harris opened the door. He wasn't surprised, a mug of black tea in hand. He'd been waiting. Liam sat across from him. No one prompted him. "You want to know why I stayed silent, don't you?" Harris asked. Liam nodded. "Because I owed him a life," the old man said. "Years ago, my wife had a stroke. No one was nearby but Carl. He carried her to the hospital, saved her life." "And Anna?" Ellison asked. "I saw them fighting," Harris admitted. "It was raining that night. I saw through the kitchen window. Carl shoved her. Anna fell. Her head hit the edge of the stone." "You didn't call the police?" Carmen asked. "I was scared. I saw her not moving. Then I saw him digging. I thought—" He'd confess, but he didn't. His voice grew faint. "I let a woman die because I couldn't repay my debt in the right way. I don't have much time left. But I can at least say this before I go." Carmen recorded everything. As they left, Harris placed a hand on Liam's shoulder. "You did what people like me couldn't. Don't forget that." That evening, back at the shelter, Liam pulled out the notebook Gavin had given him. He wrote his first line. "Today, I said my mother's name." And I believe she heard me. Ellison drove him back like always, waiting to see Liam's room light up before leaving. But tonight, he walked him upstairs. He handed Liam a small bag. Inside, a new journal and a fountain pen. Not just to write the past, Ellison said, but to write what comes next. Liam sat at the desk, opened the book, and wrote again. "Today, I said my mother's name. And I believe she heard me." 2 days later, an emergency town meeting was called in Fogbrooks Hall. Chief Quinn presided. Detective Carmen, a representative from the district court, and Ellison Reed were seated at the front. People filed in quietly, in small groups. No one spoke loudly. They sat like they would at a funeral, but all eyes turned toward Liam, the only person in the front row who didn't need an invitation. Clara sat beside him. Ellison on the other side, his hand resting gently on Liam's shoulder. In front of them, a small podium, and to the left, a draft sketch of the community project, Anna's Memory Garden, proposed by Ellison and Gavin. Ellison stepped up. No notes. "Some truths were buried in this town," he began, "and only a child was brave enough to dig them up. Both literally and figuratively." He shared Liam's story, how the boy had faced silence, doubt, and dismissive stares. He looked around with each word. When his eyes met Martha Keene's, she looked down. After Ellison, Carmen announced Carl Oliver would be prosecuted in the coming month, with the trial scheduled for the next quarter. No one objected. The evidence and the voices had become undeniable. After the meeting, Clara and Liam stayed behind. Ellison stayed with them. One woman approached, Ellie's mother. She hugged Liam gently and whispered, "Thank you for doing what's right. My daughter isn't afraid of her dreams anymore." Ellison watched her go, then turned to Liam. "Sometimes a dream just needs one person to believe in it, to become real. You did that." That night, it rained lightly. Liam couldn't sleep. He stepped out to the shelter's porch, sat quietly under the tin roof. The breeze was cool. Ellison joined him moments later, carrying 2 cups of hot cocoa. "Can't sleep?" he asked. "I'm thinking about the trial," Liam said. "What if he doesn't confess?" Ellison handed him a cup, sat beside him. "Then we still have us. And we still have the truth. And truth, Liam, doesn't need to be believed to be real." Liam looked up. His face still young, but his eyes had grown deep and bright, like someone who had seen what others tried to ignore. "I'll testify," Liam said. "I'll tell it all." "I know," Ellison replied, "and I'll be in the front row, right next to Clara, so you know, you'll never stand alone." Fogbrook, at last, was learning to face itself. 3 weeks later, the official trial of Carl Oliver began at the Grayford County Courthouse. The courtroom was packed, no empty seats. Cameras weren't allowed, but every word was recorded by reporters' pens. Liam sat in the front row, Clara to his left, Ellison to his right. He gripped their hands tightly. Carl entered in a grey prison uniform, visibly thinner. He didn't look up. When the charges were read, he didn't object, but when the witnesses were called, his eyes finally met Liam's. There was no hatred there, no forgiveness either. Just silence. Liam took the stand. His voice was steady, clear. He told everything, the smell of soil, the dreams, the A-stone, Carl's words. The courtroom went still, as if everyone there could feel it, the past brought into the present, by a child who refused to forget. Mr. Harris testified, then Gavin, then Clara, then Carmen, presenting the investigation in full. The judge took 1 day to deliberate. The next morning, she stood to deliver the verdict. Carl Oliver, You are found guilty of first-degree murder, unlawful concealment of a body, falsifying guardianship documents, and obstruction of justice. You are sentenced to life in prison without parole. No cheers, just a long, heavy silence. Liam bowed his head. Clara wrapped her arms around him. Ellison stood behind them, eyes wet. After the verdict, Liam sat outside the courthouse with Ellison and Clara. The late afternoon sun cast soft shadows across the stone walkway. "It's over," Liam whispered. Clara shook her head. "You ended one chapter, but a new one begins now." Ellison reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small necklace, a silver letter A. "I don't know if Anna ever wore this," he said. "But I think you should keep it." Liam took it and put it on. For the first time since everything began, he smiled. "I want to go back to the garden, plant a few more flowers." For Mum, Clara nodded. "I'll brew some tea, mint and rosemary." Ellison stood, holding out his hand. "Let's go, Liam Oliver." The boy took his hand, stood tall, and walked into the setting sun, toward a place where no one was buried in silence anymore. 1 week after the trial, Fogbrook had returned to its old rhythm. But it would never be quite the same. The air felt lighter, even if the mornings still carried the familiar chill and damp. People walked slower. They looked each other in the eye a little longer. News of Carl Oliver's conviction had spread beyond town, but for those who remained, it wasn't scandal anymore. It was proof. The truth, no matter how deeply buried, could be unearthed. On Sunday morning, Liam woke early. On the small table by his window, Gavin's notebook lay open. Inside was the first design of Anna's memory garden, sketched by Liam and Ellison. It was simple, a white stone path leading into a circular garden. At the center, a wooden nameplate bearing Clara's words, surrounded by lavender, rosemary, white daisies, and other plants brought by people from the town, each with something to remember. Clara arrived in her old car, still scented faintly of lavender. Ellison was already waiting down the street, holding a basket of gardening tools. Today, they would plant the first flowers, not just for Liam's mother, but for everything forgotten, silent, and finally remembered. "You brought the notebook?" Clara asked. Liam nodded. "I wrote more in it last night." He pulled the notebook from his coat pocket and opened it to a fresh page. "Each plant will have a name," he said. "Not a person's name, but a word. Something to remember a feeling. I wrote them down. Forgiveness, memory, hope, bravery, acceptance." Clara smiled. "Then I'll plant peace. I think I need that today." At the garden, a group had already gathered. Mr. Harris had come, leaning on his cane, but there. Miss Manette arrived with Liam's former classmates, each carrying a small stone etched with a symbol. Beatrice brought 2 mint plants. Even Mrs. Martha Keene came, empty-handed, standing silently at the edge. Ellison stepped forward. "Today isn't a ceremony," he said. "It's an act. We're not doing this to erase what was wrong, but to plant what's right." He handed out tools. Everyone began. Liam dug the first hole, placed the rosemary Beatrice brought inside. He said nothing, just tied a wooden tag to it. Bravery. An hour passed. Green and purple flecked the garden. Gavin arrived late, carrying a large pot of white daisies. He placed them near the nameplate at the center. "She once helped me correct a records file one winter," he told Liam. "No one remembers. But I do. This is something I can give back." At midday, they sat in a circle around the garden. Clara brought hot tea. There were cookies from Agnes's bakery and a small cake baked by Ellie, who handed it to Liam silently. "Thank you," Liam whispered. "It's nothing. Ellie said. "My mum says, when you plant something, it means you want something to live." Liam nodded. He looked around. This ground, once used to hide death, was now full of life. Later, when most had left, Liam, Clara, and Ellison stayed behind. They moved quietly through the garden, attaching tags that had yet to be placed. Each step on the new soil felt like restoring the foundation of something old. Liam paused at the spot where he once found the stone with the letter A. He dug a small hole, placed the stone back, and covered it gently. "This is where she started to come back," he said. Ellison stood beside him, hand on his shoulder. "And where you began to grow, not in age, but in truth." Clara added, "Some people spend years learning that. You did it in a single season of rain." As they left, Liam turned to look at the garden one more time. On the wooden plaque bearing Anna's name, the setting sun caught the carved letters, and for a moment they seemed to glow. He didn't know if his mother had heard everything he did that day, but he was certain, if she could see, she would be smiling. A week after the planting, Anna's memory garden had become a quiet, steady destination, not for mourning, but for reflection. Each day, a few people stopped by. Some sat, some watched, and some began to write. Liam placed a large notebook in a small wooden drawer beneath the nameplate. On the first page, he wrote, "If you've ever missed someone, write. You don't have to sign." The first entry, in delicate handwriting, read, "I miss my mother, but I never said it until today because a child was braver than I was." Ellison proposed a scholarship in Anna Oliver's name for children who had experienced loss. The town approved it unanimously. Clara was invited to lead monthly storytelling sessions at the preschool. Liam became the first guest reader. He read from the book he co-wrote with Ms. Monette. The Mother Who Didn't Disappear, Only Got Hidden. "I think if someone truly loves, they never leave," Liam said at the launch. "But if they must, then we must be the ones who call them back, through memory." Carl, in prison, never asked for a reduced sentence. He stayed silent. He accepted it all, like a man finally paying a debt. One afternoon, he received a letter, unsigned, but written in familiar handwriting. "I don't forgive. But I also won't forget. Some things can only be undone by bearing them. Liam." Carl folded the letter, placed it on his desk. He didn't reply. But for the first time since his arrest, he asked permission to plant a tree in the prison yard. Fogbrook returned to peace, but not the kind of peace built on silence. A child had spoken, the adults had listened, and the town learned not to look away again. One afternoon, Clara took Liam back to the garden. Just the two of them. They sat beneath the rosemary bush, beside the weathered name tags. "I miss her," Clara said softly. "I do too," Liam replied. "But missing isn't for sadness. It's for holding on." Liam pulled a fresh notebook from his pocket. "I'm starting something new," he said. "Not for her, for me." Clara smiled. "And I'll be the first to read it." The wind blew gently. The plants swayed. A single lavender petal drifted down, landing between them. No one deserves to be buried simply because others want to forget. And Liam, with the heart of a child, brought his mother back into the light. He didn't fight with anger. He didn't shout. He moved through silence with belief. And in a town once muted by its own fear, that was the bravest thing anyone could do. He didn't just reclaim justice for his mother. He reclaimed the light for a place that once chose to close its eyes. Liam's courage didn't come from strength, but from the smallest, purest faith, that the truth, when spoken in a clear, honest voice, can move a community. And he was never alone. Clara, the woman who carried memory and quiet conviction, had stood beside him from the start. Ellison, a man who had once lost too much, saw in Liam what he couldn't save in his daughter. Ms. Monette, Beatrice, Mr. Harris, Gavin, Ellie, each in their own way, helped mend what had once been broken. Eventually, Ellison became more than a guardian. He filed to adopt Liam. The court approved it soon after the trial. Liam now lived with him in a wooden house on the hill with tall bookshelves, a warm kitchen, and windows facing the morning sun. Clara, though she didn't live with them, visited every weekend. She called Liam my grandson. Ellie called him head gardener. Even those who had once stayed silent, like Martha, changed. She became the godparent of a child at a nearby orphanage. "If I can't fix the past," she said, "at least I can help change the future." On a soft May morning, Liam stood in front of Anna's memory garden. The sunlight was warm. He wore a white shirt, a notebook in his hand. He looked into a camera lens. The school's film class, recording for the town's first remembrance ceremony. Liam spoke. "Thank you to everyone who listened to me, who believed me, who stood with me. Not everyone gets to have their mother come back. But if we remember, if we love, and if we refuse to let anyone be buried in silence, then no one ever truly disappears." He paused, then added, "Thank you, Mum, for staying, even if only in dreams. And thank you, all of you, for making that dream real." The wind stirred. The row of white daisies swayed. The camera shut off, but the light in the eyes of the boy, now named Liam Oliver, remained. Thank you for walking with Liam through every storm, every dream, every shovel's turn in the old earth. Maybe you've been a Liam, carrying a truth no one believed. Maybe you've been a Clara, silent, too long, but never again. This story wasn't just about a mother buried. It was about all the things we bury, love, truth, memory, and the long, brave journey to bring them back to light. Wherever you are, whatever silence or pain you carry, may you find someone who will listen, and a place warm enough to begin again, like Anna's memory garden. And if one day you hear someone whisper, "There's something beneath this ground," please don't turn away. You just might be the only one brave enough to listen.